If you have a smoking gun, does that mean the people around you get secondhand smoke?
Hi, I'm Paul Rosenrood. You might remember me from a video where I mixed up my acronyms. In the news today, there was more information about Michael Flynn. That's the National Security Advisor who was fired because he may have been compromised by Russian interests and also lied about it to the vice president. The news that broke today was that apparently Obama had personally warned Trump about the fact that he may be compromised. And it's not quite the smoking gun, it sounds like, just because we don't know what the content of that warning is, right? It could have been anything from a very simple look. Michael Flynn's got some stuff going on, I'm not sure you should hire him, to something more severe like Michael Flynn could be a spy, I would not hire him, it's kind of dangerous to our democracy. Much more severe warning, and we don't know where within that range Obama's warning was to Trump. And until we know more about how severe the warning was, we can't really make too much of it yet. Now, there was a testimony by former acting Attorney General Sally Yates today where she suggested that the administration may have gotten other clear warnings. So people are focused on finding more information about the Michael Flynn situation, specifically who knew what and when did they know it. Now, with anything Trump related these days, America's kind of moving toward a more of an evaluation period. Some people look at the way people are starting to approach it and feel like we're normalizing Trump, and that's not really what's going on. The thing that's going on is that the bitterly contested election is now over, and tensions are lower. That doesn't mean that people like Trump anymore. It doesn't mean that people feel any less strongly. It's just that tensions are lower and people act differently as a result of that. It's much easier to look at facts right now, basically. It kind of reminds me of, you see, there was a comic once named Stephen Colbert on a cable channel far away, and he played a character on this cable show that was also named Stephen Colbert, and he invented a word called truthiness. And he made up this word to bring attention to the idea that oftentimes we have a tendency to focus more on whether something sounds and feels true than the evidence that suggests it's true. And sometimes we act that way for a little bit longer than we should. It's kind of natural to have an immediate gut reaction, but it relates to something I like to call the velocity of truth. Now, any claim, any fact, it's either true or it's not, right? The velocity of truth doesn't speak to that. What the velocity of truth speaks to is how quickly a consensus on the truth occurs. The velocity of truth can be short, it can be long, and there's obviously going to be at least some time lag, just because it takes some communication time, at least, between somebody finding something out and everyone agreeing that it's true. There's all sorts of reasons that the velocity of truth can be fast or slow. It can be that the issue is very complex. It can be that the issue just doesn't come up that much. It could be that, even if it's the most important thing in the world, there's one thing that is always more important to you, and that's your life. Russian interference or not, it might just not have the same urgency for you as the fact that your daughter's sick, or your boss is a jerk, or you're having problems paying your bills, or whatever it is that's going on in your life. Everybody has these stresses, and that's one of the resistances to the velocity of truth. It just takes a minute. It doesn't mean that you're completely uninterested in the things that are going in the world. It's just that it has to take a place in the line between all the other things going on in your life, and it's perfectly natural and okay. Don't worry about it, right? But I'll talk more about the velocity of truth some other time. But for now, I just want to say that the velocity of politics in general has sped up, by which I mean it's a lot faster for us to arrive at a consensus about what is and isn't true, because those tensions aren't as high, and that was a main factor that slowed things down in terms of building consensus. So, other things Trump related. There's a columnist named David Frum. God, I never pronounce this guy's name right. It's David Frum, and he was on TV recently, and these pundits were talking about how it seemed like Trump wasn't getting much of his agenda through Congress. And David Frum countered them and said, well, by the measure Trump cares about, he's really successful. And David Frum made the allegation that President Trump has been profiting himself personally through deals with foreign countries, deals with President Duarte of the Philippines. And that's a very serious claim, so it takes a lot to prove it. And so what can we look at to see if it's true or not? And it's important to evaluate if it's true. Trump isn't special in terms of this, right? Anybody can be corrupt. Anybody can be a thief. If you work in retail, certainly if you work at any Trump property where retail goods are sold, I guarantee you get a bag check before you walk out of the building. Even if you're an employee who's most trustworthy guy in the world, worked there for 40 years, some security guard is patting you down and you walk out. Most normal thing in the world, right? Presidents are no different. People start by pointing out the fact that Trump hasn't released his tax returns. That's certainly important circumstantial evidence, but the absence of evidence is not quite the best evidence. So, what else can we look at? Well, we can look at actions and things surrounding actions, right? Like I don't need to look at McDonald's tax returns to figure out that McDonald's is a big company. I don't need to look at McDonald's tax returns to figure out that what their labor conditions are. I can just ask somebody who works there, what's it like working at McDonald's? And the same is true for any Trump property. It would be helpful to have those tax returns. It would be helpful to have more financial documents, but there's still a lot of information you could probably find out without doing that, right? The first question you want to ask is, okay, so let's say I wanted to bribe Trump. Let's say I wanted to get something out of Trump in exchange for money of some sort. Well, there's a logistical problem with doing this, which is that Trump is not a man of modest means. He has a lot of money, so the bribery cost is going to inherently be a lot higher if you were to bribe him. And the problem with that is, if you have to bribe a lot of money to someone, well, there's going to be a paper trail, or there's going to be a physical trail, right? And it's not just going to be in tax returns. It's going to be in contracts. It's going to be in his business dealings. It's going to be in all sorts of other things. Just because that's the only way you can move the money, and you're probably going to see it in some aspect, at least given what Trump's holdings are, which is real estate. It's something you can look at, you can see. So we can, one thing we can do is we can look at Donald Trump's foreign diplomacy and ask, okay, well, is what he's doing, does it actually make sense? Like, for instance, if Trump has a huge problem with President Duarte one day, like he just thinks he's the biggest dick in the world, and then the next day he's like, hey, we're cutting this great deal with President Duarte of the Philippines. That would be a signal, that would be some smoke, right? We'd want to say, hey, wait a second. Well, let me just check your bag before you walk out that door. We can also look at Trump company projects in countries where he has these dealings, countries where we might normally have some conflicts of interests as a country with another country. Like the Philippines or Turkey, right? We can ask, well, do Trump projects in those countries get to go through red tape faster. You know, the all the permits and stuff you have to do to build a building. Are there laws or mechanisms on the books that make it easier for that company to make money? Could his properties be affected by whatever deal he's making? Did the business law in that country recently change? Did the zoning laws change? You know, who are the contractors who work in those countries? Are they a normal contractor for that area, or are they a different contractor? You know, now it's not true that where there's smoke, there's always fire, but where there's smoke, there should probably be a fire truck. And we can be the fire truck, right? It's, you know, yeah, we don't know if there's a fire, but if we think about what to look for, well, you know, we think about what a conflict of interest would result in, and we can kind of protect ourselves. You know, we can not be surprised, at least, and use that to make decisions, right? And I guess what I'm trying to say here is that only you can prevent Smokey the Bear analogies. Thanks for watching. I know this was a long video. I apologize, but if you enjoyed it, please subscribe.